All right, everybody, welcome to Jon Ferrian Live. We've got an awesome episode here for all of you guys that are coming in live to watch Team Virago, who just got done racing last month, the Cains Quest Race up in Labrador, Canada. Guys, this is going to be an epic episode because all the behind the scenes stuff that's coming in, we're going to be able to talk about. And so, as you're coming into the show and as it's starting to stream out, we got people starting to pop in. Here's what I need you to do. Everybody who's watching, here's your instructions. I need you to drop in the comments right now where you're watching from. We want to see how widespread all of this is coming in from. And as you're doing that, as soon as you've dropped in the comments where you're watching from, drop it in there and then share this out, guys. Everybody needs to share this out so we can get this incredible story of this incredible race, of this incredible team on this incredible show. So here we go. Let's start doing some introductions as we go. But just so you guys know, we've got David Wagner from California popping in. He's the first one to comment, and more will be popping in shortly. So we got people coming in. But let's just go and do some introductions here, guys. So I'm actually going to go first, just in case anybody hasn't ever seen me before. I know some of the fans of Team Virago maybe haven't seen my show before. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, what I normally am doing on these shows, but I run the show called Jon Ferrian Live, and you see the hashtag up in the upper corner of the show called hashtag Live Large. Just so you know, the show's called Jon Ferrian Live, but hashtag Live Large is all about living life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference in this world. That's what this is all about, and we're tied into snowmobiling. We key focus in on things like safety and education and growing the sport, and this show definitely falls into the category of growing the sport, but we're going to have a lot of education and safety messages along the way as well. So, following tradition to what's going on. I live here in Washington State, originally from Minnesota, involved in things like the Washington State Snowmobile Association. I'm the state safety chair, also on the Northwest Avalanche Center's board of directors here in Washington State. So got my fingers in just about everything around here in snowmobiling. I'm a passionate snowmobiler, been all over it, and I've been watching this team. We actually did interviews with Coreen and Rebecca independently previously, back over the last 6 months now. I don't know, 4 months or so, but it's been a while. But let me tee it up here, and I'm just going to go in order around the screen here. So, Coreen, please introduce yourself briefly and let everybody know a little bit about where you live and a little bit about you before we go into the story of the race.
Hi, everybody. I'm Coreen. I'm currently living in Rexton, New Brunswick. I'm actually from Labrador, so I've been involved with Cains Quest since it started in 2006. Snowmobiling is a big part of our life in Labrador, and definitely carried it into New Brunswick with myself when I moved here with my family.
Wonderful,
Bless
wonderful.
you, Rebecca.
Gesundheit. So, Rebecca, are you ready? You want to introduce yourself and let us know a little bit
Yeah,
about where you are and all that?
Barking and the alarm going off for the dog training collar that I got. Sorry, everything's
Awesome.
happening at once. Hey, how's everybody going?
Live
I'm Charles.
video, right? That's what this is all about. Is just in case
kids,
anybody
dogs,
ever wondered,
cats,
live shows. We do it all right here on the show, live in person. That's why we call it Jon Ferrian Live. So anyway,
Kelly was on top of it though. She got it all taken care of, so I didn't have to run off. But
Perfect.
Rebecca Charles from Alaska. Very, very, very proud to be part of Team Virago and to have been invited to participate with these amazing people. So I'm still very humbled by the experience, and I'm excited to tell stories.
That's awesome. I can't wait to get into all the stories from the race and everything that happened. And so, Jason, Mr. Jason Paul, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason. I was Team Virago's manager this year and member of their support crew. I've been, like Coreen, born and raised in Labrador. We recently moved to New Brunswick a couple years ago, but I've been involved with Cains Quest pretty much since it started, whether being racing. I've raced 3 times myself, or I've been a support crew with a top 5 finishing team pretty much every year in between. So that's a big part of me and Labrador. It kind of, I do a lot of fishing, trapping, snowmobiling, and Cains Quest is a personal challenge that a lot of people who snowmobile a great deal in backcountry, remote areas really grasp or levitate to this race because it's it's just something like, holy cow, like, 3,200 kilometers, 2,000 miles of backcountry, no trails, no nothing, following rivers. But, it's something that it's kind of like an addiction, really. That's pretty rough sometimes because it's an expensive addiction. The race
Yeah,
is great.
yeah. Snowmobiling is an expensive addiction for anybody and everybody, regardless of what it is. But it's one of those things that once you get into it and you get hooked and you're involved in it, it's like it's hard to back away, and you just kind of find yourself keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And Jason, I'm actually going to go to you with this first question, or this next question is, there may be some folks who are watching that they probably have seen Cains Quest too, but maybe a little history of Cains Quest, right? It's a I'll give you the high level, right? It's the cross country race, Labrador. People, what would they compare it to? I think some people maybe have heard of the Iron Dog race up in Alaska, which I know Rebecca's been involved in a little bit. But is there anything else out there that's like it? Is it similar to the Iron Dog? Is it not? Like, how would you describe the race, and give us a little history of the race, of when it started, what years it started?
Well, the race started in 2006. It started out as, not sure the exact mileage, but we do it right now as the first checkpoint. The first race was actually the first checkpoint and return. So it grown substantially since 2006. I don't think there's, from what I know, definitely not North America, a race that compares. The Iron Dog would be definitely the closest. But the thing unique about Cains Quest is that the race is very determined by what the leaders do. And I say that because we're given a set of checkpoints that we need to get to in that particular way. So checkpoint 1, 2, and so on. How we get there doesn't matter as long as we don't break any of the rules, which would be using a groomed trail, a transmission or power line, a roadway, etc. So, people tend to, over the years, look for shortcuts, or they talk to a local trapper and find trap trails that are, portages that are cut through wooded areas, whereas before we would do a 20-mile maybe loop around a riverway. So essentially you cross Labrador, or you take pretty much the way the race route is now. It encompasses the perimeter of Labrador and pretty much every community in Labrador. It was originally developed to promote tourism and snowmobiling in Labrador because we have, 8 months of winter, 9 months of winter.
Okay.
And it also wanted to open up the different communities and the hospitality of the people of Labrador, who, a lot of these communities are very remote. You can't get to them unless you go on snowmobile or you fly there. So, this race opens up those communities. It brings a lot of people through, whether it's the race or support crew, things like that. And it also gives the racers an opportunity to experience Labrador and access the terrain. So when you enter Cains Quest, it's a backcountry race, and you experience very thick woods.
Okay.
Where if you went there with a 146 ski stance, you're bending skis, going through some of the trees. Then you can get to sea ice, where you do miles and miles of sea ice and couldn't encounter polar bears. Tundra, where there's no trees, not so much as you can find a state fire. It's absolute barren rock, very little snow.
Yeah.
So the vastness of the terrain, that mountains, plains, lakes, rivers,
Yeah.
so that's something that Labrador has to offer, that the race and the people that came up with the idea of this race wanted to offer the snowmobile community, throughout. And Cains Quest has done a really good job to get people, from the U.S. As this year Rebecca came all the way from Alaska, had people from Minnesota, Maine, all throughout Canada, and we had some international teams, France, Finland, participate in this race. So it's a world-class race, but I really don't think it compares to anything, because there's no set trail. It's every year is different. Every year is always something different. Someone comes up with a new bag of tricks, and it's very, very based on what the leaders do, which makes it very challenging for the teams and the support crews.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm going to bump up to Coreen here above me now. And Coreen, you and Jason here raced the race together back in 2012. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes.
And can you give us a little bit of background on that experience, right? Like, I mean, again, just briefly, we're going to really focus on this trip too, but, you know, that experience, obviously, you had already been probably supporting and been a support person, but you know, the race you had in 2012 must have triggered something that made you want to then pull together an all-female race team for this year. So give us a little tidbit of your experience back in 2012 before we dive into this year's race.
Sure thing. So Jason and I, when we raced in 2012, Jason had actually raced prior in 2009. So we had a lot of experience in being involved in the race at that point, and as well as some support crew in between that. So it had sparked my interest ever since it started in 2006. So luckily we got to race in 2012, and it was obviously an experience that was memorable and enjoyable that I wanted to do it again. That year it was 2,800 kilometers, and we actually went into Quebec, right into the northern part, into Coudjois. We covered a lot of land that year as well, and just the experience, the meeting people, the camaraderie that goes along with it is just really drawing, and it becomes an addiction to be part of such an exciting event. So I've, wanted to race again ever since 2012, and I thought it was about time that we got some females into this race, and I really wanted to jump on that opportunity to add an all-female team to the roster. They actually attempted a women's trail class quite a few years back, but it's difficult because a lot of the women that would be interested in racing, their husbands are already racing. So there goes their support crew.
Yeah.
There goes, the household money has already gone to the larger team in the pro class. So it didn't work out, and I'm hoping one day that we could probably bring that opportunity back around. But I was definitely excited to be able to experience the all-female team this time around.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing, and you're right. Sometimes you get a little taste of something, and it makes you want to dig deeper and push harder, as Jason's already referenced. And so, Jason, you had mentioned there's nothing else like it, and compared to even the Iron Dog, it's not the same. And Rebecca's over there going like, polar bears and like Iron Dog, like, no, it's nothing like it. And so, Rebecca, here's your shot to give us a little bit of perspective on you of, give us a brief synopsis of, first of all, how you got talked into this race, because here you are all the way over in Alaska, and they reached out to you based on some mutual friends that you guys had, right? So talk about how, your experience with the Iron Dog and the comparison between the races and how you got pulled into this one.
That's a lot of stories. So I'll cut it as short as I can. First of all, hi, Todd Smith. He just messaged that he's watching. So
okay.
Say hi to the friends. But I was down in Florida on vacation, and I'm pretty much the only person up here who ever followed Cains Quest. People up here in Alaska don't really know a lot about Cains Quest, right? Or did not previously. So when Rob Gardner and Andrew Milley won in 2018, I had met Rob up here. He had run Iron Dog, and I think he had put a Facebook post up or something. Kareen's got a better memory than I do, but he put a Facebook post up saying that we need to talk. Within a few days, I had committed to running with her. As far as the difference between the two races, I think that there's been some hard feelings up here about me saying about how hard Cains Quest is, and maybe degrading or downplaying Iron Dog. They're just two totally different events. As far as long distance racing goes, they are both very unique events. One of them is definitely a speed race. One of them you're running 100 miles an hour for the same distances that we're doing. We're in Cains Quest running a lot slower. The terrain's a lot less predictable, I think I could say. And so you're running through things that, like, if I had known that what I was getting into, I wouldn't have signed up for it, because I feel like my riding ability was not quite to where it needed to be. And I always felt like I was a great technical rider. until I went out east. So they're two totally different events. And in both events, I've met the best racers that there are in the world. And so I'm very excited because actually yesterday morning I spoke with one of the Cains Quest racers, and he's bringing a whole crew up here this year to come do Iron Dog. So I am excited to see like other people's input, because one person can say one thing about the comparison, but once we start to get numerous people comparing things, I think that there's going to be more of a consensus on the differences between the races. One's a speed race, one's an endurance race. You're not going to see people running. Typically, you're not going to see people running for 20 hours straight on Iron Dog. They're going to be going a lot faster. They're going to be covering that mileage faster. Cains Quest, it's a lot more of like a slog. You're definitely like stuck a lot more. You're going backcountry. You're navigating a lot more. So two totally different animals. And I have great respect for both people who have done both events.
Sounds great. Sounds great. And so what I want to do next is now let's go to the race, right? Like, so remind me of the dates. Somebody just throw it out there. What were the dates of the race? It was about a month ago, right?
March 7th was the start.
Yep. So March 7th, almost exactly a month ago, was the race. And what I want to do is to have the ladies here talk a little bit about, the anticipation of the race, the first day of the race. Let's just take it day by day and break it up. And then what I would love to do is, ladies, if either of you have a spot where you want to pause and insert, the support team and how the support team, because I think what we can do is we can kind of tell a story of each day of the race and how the support team, supported and helped that day. And then as you're talking about the behind the scenes of the race, let's have Jason then fill in the gaps of what was maybe happening from a support team's perspective, maybe behind the scenes on his side. And so we'll kind of just talk it through. It was a 5-day race, 4-day race, 5 days, right?
So here's my synopsis of the race is, and then you're at the finish. So I don't really know what happened. I don't even remember the checkpoints we were at. Like everything just kind of blended together. Coreen would tell me what checkpoint we were at. I'd be like, what checkpoint were we just at?
Yeah.
And she'd have to tell me over the radios. And so Coreen definitely has a much better memory when it comes to that. I was just blown away. My mind wasn't even working anymore at a certain point. I was just getting on the sled, pressing the throttle, and moving forward. Coreen probably can give you a little bit better synopsis of checkpoint to checkpoint breakdown.
It sounds good. We'll have go ahead, Jason. Yep.
Just before the girls started, I wanted, when it comes to the support crew, there was a lot of planning and obviously building of the sleds prior to the beginning of the race. And, we actually had support crew that didn't see the beginning of the race, didn't see the start line, because they had to be prior to, in order to intercept the girls with fuel and things like that. Right? So, the race actually, although the race started, at 9 a.m. on March 7th, we had support crew, gone the day before. And, they were staged in remote cabins. We had guys in tents, like it was minus 40 and guys were sleeping in tents for 2 nights. So a lot goes on just before even the start line.
Yeah, and even prepping the sleds too. And I know we talked a little bit about what it took to prep the sleds and stuff in the previous episodes. I know with Coreen we talked about the things you guys are doing. I think Rebecca too. Like, what are you doing to modify the sleds? What are you packing on the sleds? And so there's a lot of tools. There's a lot of spare parts. There's a lot of supplies and all those type of things to keep going too. And I know that's all part of that preparation plan and that experience, right? And the other night when we did this. Kind of a prep for this show, the 4 of us were on here, and I got to hear stories about, having a whole kind of a drone sled, if you want to call it that, right? So, if you want to talk maybe a little bit about that, Jason, of the extra sled that you were using as part of the route also with the support team that you could rob parts off of, right? Like that's a big part of that race as well in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, we had the ability. Coreen had purchased a 2019 backcountry XRS, and they raced 2020 backcountry XRSs. So she had purchased one in 2019 as a training sled as such. So when we built this race, we built essentially 3 sleds. So the 2019, I utilized that as a remote fuel sled. We hauled some gas to some remote areas. Myself and my friend from Labrador, Terry Randall, we done almost 1,000 miles of the race actually.
Okay.
So we were fortunate enough to have that donor sled, and some teams do that and some teams don't, but a lot of the remote areas that you go, as we mentioned before, there's no dealerships, there's not even access, only by plane, and that plane comes maybe once a day if the weather's permitting. So if you break something, you don't have the part, the race is over.
Yeah.
There's a 18-hour time limit. Once a place team crosses the finish line, if you don't make it within 18 hours, you're disqualified.
Yep.
So if you got to wait 18 hours for a plane to bring you a part, that race is done.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were fortunate enough to have the ability to have that donor sled and put that in strategic areas.
Yeah.
To provide whatever part that the girls may need that we can change out the field, right? When we talk about support crew, we talked about it. It's very different from a lot of races because we have a great deal of people. Like just right off the top, we had 2 teams on snowmobiles. So we have myself and Terry Randall. That, like I say, we done almost half the race. Mm-hmm. Behind these girls in different places. We had, Gerard Millier, John Sock, and Bruce LeBlanc, Daryl Hickey. These 4 guys on snowmobiles in a lot of remote areas with gas. There's no access to fuel.
Yeah.
So these guys were there. We had 3 pickup trucks on the road. Dwayne Michelin, Stokes. Lindsay Randall, Charlene Michelin. I mean, like, we just have people all over the place, and there's a plan. You need to be here. You need to be there. This is what you need. So a lot of that goes to play before we even go to the start line.
Yeah.
And
Sounds good.
the amount of equipment that you kind of need to do that.
Yeah.
Is huge.
So Jason, something I just want to call out here is we are having a little bit of a tough time hearing you. We're hearing probably 2/3 to 3/4 of everything you're saying, but okay. I think your bandwidth connection is maybe a little tough. I don't know if it's in the room you're in or what's going on there. So I'm actually going to shift gears a little bit. I appreciate the update you gave us so far. Not sure if there's anything you can adjust or mess with, or maybe there's another room you can adjust to while we go to Coreen here. But while we do that, so if you need to, take a minute, move rooms if you need to. If you need to stay where you're at, that's fine. We'll just maybe kind of limit it, how much depth you go into, because I don't want to have people misunderstanding what you're saying. And so I think so far everybody else has been pretty good so far. But so what I want to do is just remind everybody, if you're already watching, we got a lot of people viewing. This is great. If you haven't already, drop in the comments where you're watching from. We really want to know where all the people around the world are watching from. And we got people from all over the U.S., Canada, as well as Alaska and everything too. And, do that and share this out. So we continue to get this message out and this exciting story out by sharing it. So please do that. And then Coreen, I'd love to go to you and just talk a little bit about kind of the race and kind of, talk about the start of the race. It was a timed start of the race, right? Like I think I watched that live. I was working remote here from Washington during coronavirus world, but I had my phone here at my desk, and when the lives would pop up, I would see when you guys would take off or when you come in and out of a checkpoint. So I did my best to try to follow along that race that week when you guys were there. It's hard to believe it's been a month now. I've been working from home already more now, but I got memories of those days. But talk us through the race a little bit and what you experienced and some of the maybe the things that you guys haven't talked about broadly yet of, maybe issues you ran into, trouble that you ran into. I heard stories about things like sleds flipping over. Every time I hear the word polar bear, I see Rebecca's eyes get giant, all that kind of stuff. So give us some insights there.
Sure thing. So if you're having connection issues with me as well, Jason and I are sharing the same bandwidth in this house. Hopefully the
kids aren't in the house playing video games at the same time. If they are, tell them to knock it off, right?
They've been warned. So if you're hearing me okay, that's great. But if we need to, me and Jason can go to one computer and cut out the 2 connections. So with the race, it's a 5-day race, but it's 2 years in the making. Not only for us, but for many, many teams. So, you're planning to recruit sponsorships and pick your sled, order your sled, build your sled. So there's a lot of things leading up to it. So if I kind of take it day by day through the race, and we'll start with, just the logistics of getting all of our team into Lab City for the race was a big event for us as well. Jason and I had to truck from New Brunswick. We had 3 of our support crew trucking from New Brunswick when the ferry was closed and they had to take the long way around because of weather, So there was some difficulties. Rebecca and 2 of her crew flew in from Alaska. My family flew in from Newfoundland. So we're all trying to get into Lab City prior to, and leading up into the race, they do a race position draw. They, do Q&A for the racers to make sure we're all on the same page for the event and whatnot.
Wait, who's first?
That was what I was getting to. So lo and behold, when I raced in 2012, there was 35 teams racing, and I go up to the front of the room and I pull my number from the hat, and what did I get? 35. I left in the last place in 2012. So this year, they now have an RCMP officer, a local police officer, do the draw now. And lo and behold, the man reaches in and pulls out Team 39. You're leaving in first position.
You gotta be kidding me.
and that was my words. You're freaking kidding me. So, that was an extremely big highlight for the race, though. It was amazing enough that female racers were coming to the roster, but now we're going to start the day on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. We were leaving the start line, and we were first on the line. So it was pretty exciting. So Cains Quest did a really good job of live feed, the race throughout at each checkpoint. So that was really great for the fans. So as the years have gone by and social media has improved, that gave a lot of opportunity for the fans to follow along a lot closer. So live feed right off of day one. Go ahead, John.
I have a question for you. Is the number one, the pole position, was in your mind, is it an advantage or a disadvantage? I think of things like setting the pace for the race, right? Like if you're going in behind somebody, maybe you're pacing yourself with somebody else, maybe you're not. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there, but advantage or disadvantage in your opinion being number one choice?
Yep, certainly. So there is advantages of leaving in the top 10. Because we do a lot of river running, the more sleds that beat over narrow rivers and creeks, they break open the rivers and creeks. So it can be very difficult to navigate as you're further behind in the pack. There's a couple routes out of Lab City for us to get into our first checkpoint. We chose the safest route. We chose a route that we knew, was in good condition, less river running. So we stuck to the safe route, we'll say. For us, we stuck to a steady pace, to get comfortable with our sleds. For Rebecca, this is the first time she ran this setup. So it was really important for her to get the feel of the sled before we jumped into anything extreme. So it was a good opportunity for us to have that advantage on we'll call it the easier part of the race, because it was definitely a much more known route and a good ride to get started. So we didn't pace the race by no means.
We were winning at one point, though.
Yeah.
We were in first place at one point.
But we did get an extra 40 some odd minutes of rest. So that was advantageous.
That's awesome.
So that's how they at the first checkpoint, you're held back the amount of minutes that the last place left. So that puts you on an even time clock. So that is an advantage for us, because now all of a sudden we get 47 minutes of rest off the clock. Well, sorry, we're on the clock, but we're forced to take that break. So we got to, get some food in us, use the washroom, get cleaned up before we had to go again. So there is advantages to leaving in the first place, but it can make it difficult for that pace, to keep in front of everybody. So we watched sleds pass us on the lake immediately outside of town, and we just waved to them and enjoy, boys, because we're on our own pace at this point. And we were racing ourselves. We weren't racing against everybody else. So, getting into there's a section of the race into the first checkpoint where Rebecca likes to refer to it as being caned to death, because it's a grown trail beds, and you're just getting whip, 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 whip the whole way through for a couple miles. So it was, painful. And this would be where I had my first fainting goat moment, where I tipped over my sled, and
It was really cute.
Rebecca
actually.
had gotten stuck where she dipped off the trail. Oh, it was like slow motion, the Matrix. You think it's a soft bump and it's a hard one, and it just knocks you over.
She learned that from coming up to Alaska.
It's
me
innocent.
doing it.
Oh, you demonstrated for her the fainting goat move in Alaska. Well, that was convenient.
When we were training, it was all white out on the river, and I did a fainting goat and taught her how to do the move. So you're welcome, Coreen.
Yeah. So generally throughout the whole race, was the light pretty flat, and was it hard to see, or did you have any sun whatsoever through the race?
It was dark. We ran at night all the time, it seemed like.
Well, we ran half daylight, half dark. We did have some low light days which was difficult for seeing the bumps and whatnot, but it was manageable. I could go on all day about section to section of the race, but we'll try to stick to the most exciting parts, we'll say. But some of the things that we experience in this race is navigating through very thick bush. So tree stands that are very tight, and like Jason was saying, you can't go with a wide T stance through this because you'll get wedged. You won't make it through. So that is really hard on the shoulders because you're constantly turning, and you make a turn and you can see your partner on your left because you're winding that close through narrow trails. So your pace there is very slow. And that's one of the reasons why you see an average speed between 50 and 60, because all of a sudden you're doing 20, 25 in the woods, and then you get on the sea ice and you can do 150. So that really, brings your average speed down pretty quickly. So the narrow trails, we like to call them goat paths because there's really not much else fitting through there. In regards to visibility, we had a section of the race where we went into Lanticleer. So it's barren country. There's no trees. You're up on hilltops, just rolling hills.
Huge
and
rocks.
Big rocks. And we were warned well in advance from the locals that there's not a lot of snow. So the rocks are exposed. You got to be careful, stick to the trail, stick to the path. And the wind came up, blowing snow. You couldn't see more than 10 feet in front of your ski tips. It came on dark because we were starting, late in the night. And I'm just trying to keep my ski tips on the trail in front of me and not deviate left or right because of those big boulders that you couldn't see. And at some points I had to blow over so hard I couldn't see the trail, and I didn't want to lose the trail. And, Rebecca's trying to stay close to me so she's not losing me. So we ran into some difficult weather conditions as well, but it still, that's where your safety brain kicks in, because I'm looking at my GPS and my GPS route was different from what I was following. And that's because this year crews took different paths. Like Jason said, the guys that are out scouting the trails are looking for those shortcuts. So they're trying to, cut off the big bends and take straighter routes and things like this. So all of a sudden I have to pick and choose. Do I follow my GPS or do I follow the race route that's in front of me right now? So in low visibility conditions, and you don't have the GPS route that they're taking, the best thing to do is stick to the ski trail that's in front of you.
Yeah.
It's going somewhere. We're going in the general direction. So we had to kind of pick and choose what we did there. We were actually coming into Lanticleer. You can't use the groomed trail. So that's definitely a big difference between when people wonder, what's this race like? We say it's backcountry. It literally is backcountry. We're not permitted to use groomed trail. So coming into Lanticleer, all of a sudden we lose the trail. We're not sure. There's all kinds of local trails going everywhere to people's cabins. And we're like, okay, now how the heck do we get into the town? I don't have it on my GPS.
So, but nobody told me that we were actually, when I did the pins last night on my map here, we were actually in Quebec at the time.
We were. So there is a portion going into Lanticleer that you actually come into Quebec a little bit.
Huh,
and
okay.
we're headed towards the town, but we're headed towards the groomed trail. And in my head, I'm going, okay, let's factor in how much time would I lose going back to look for the trail versus taking the penalty on the groom trail into the town. So I'm asking,
we had
okay,
these
what can we
conversations
sacrifice
a couple
here?
times. Like the groom
Yes,
trail,
it happened
like,
more than once.
yeah, taking the penalty versus turning around and going and finding the other route. But anyway,
Yeah.
You lose a lot of time. You're burning gas.
Yeah. What's the penalty? I mean, is it a minute time penalty type thing, or like what kind of a time penalty is it?
variable.
It's variable. It's not predetermined. It's based on your advantage. How much did you gain by getting in there? They kind of clock you back and charge you for it. So you don't know. So I'm doing the math. If I take the groom trail, it's about, a 5 kilometer. So it gives me an advantage getting in there. So then I'll kind of do the math in my head and expected a 30-minute delay. And in my head, I'm going, screw it. We'll take the 30-minute delay. But luckily, a local had been watching us on the computer, seen us going the wrong way.
We were going to the wrong town.
Oh no.
So he drives out on his snowmobile, and I was like, "Ooh, there's a light coming." I was like, "Rebecca, I got to stop and talk to this person and figure out where do I go from here." So God love him. He stops. He says, "You're going the wrong way," and we're like, "Yeah, we know we are, but we don't have a GPS point at this time." So luckily he rerouted us, got us back in the low visibility conditions, got us on the right trail so we could get into town. So little moments like that are so memorable. Somebody's watching the computer at home.
He said, go back 2 lakes. And Coreen says, what lakes? You couldn't see anything. We call them ground storms up here, where it's blowing snow and you can't see anything probably for about 15 to 20 feet. And then you can see a bright, clear sky.
Okay.
So he's like, go back 2 lakes. And Kareem said something along the lines of, what lakes?
Yeah.
You couldn't see anything. We didn't know if we were on land, if we were on water. We had no idea what we were on because the detail in your GPS on night mode is very minimal as well. So I'm like, there is no 2 ponds. I don't see anything.
And that section,
had some great help
of the race,
from some locals.
like that section of the race is called it's tundra. So there's no trees, surrounding a lake or a river.
Okay.
So the hills and the land looks the same as what it all looks like one frozen mass.
Yeah.
Right. So that with the low drift and the storm, that's why it's hard to differentiate between the two. Unless you physically go up a hill, you obviously know a lake doesn't go up. But it's fairly flat in areas as well, so that's why it gets confusing.
So it makes complete sense. So I got a quick question, kind of it's GPS, right? So I'm assuming that the race officials were tracking all racers via GPS 100% of the time. Is that accurate? Yep. And then does that also then go to like the Cains Quest website and people can watch the racers and the routes you're taking and track you via GPS also on the same thing?
Yes. They have, as a part of the safety and for race fans to follow, each race team has one tracker that's mounted to the snowmobile, and it gets updated every 10 minutes with your real-time speed, your GPS location. And
they're using inReaches, which is exactly what we've been using for all of our training, for like my mountain climbing. So if you followed any of that, it's the same exact platform.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So was there, some of these fainting goat moments, there was moments I heard about like the sled was upside down and another crew came to help you. Let's talk about that camaraderie between race teams, your competitors, but also because you're out in this, backcountry wilderness, teams are looking out for each other. Who can kind of talk to that a little bit?
I know that I personally, I was very grateful that between when we left L'Anse Eau Claire and we went a 20-hour ride, I think it was about a 20-hour ride to Riglet. Am I right, Coreen? Because I keep getting all the checkpoints screwed up, right? We actually traveled with Team 65 at a certain point. They got stuck. We got stuck. At one point, I was pinned under my sled with my arm pinned underneath my handlebar, my leg pinned underneath my running board. And actually, Bennett, who is on Team 65, Bennett and Kelsey, I was talking to him I think the day before yesterday, he said, I was really worried about you, you know, like these trails are nothing to joke with. They're not trails. They're just people picking routes through the forest. And then you have, you know, so many teams in front of you running these big paddle tracks. They're augering out. So you're like 4 or 5 foot deep augers of trenches. A lot of people are running 15-inch wide tracks. We're running 16-inch wide tracks. So obviously, you know, my lack of skill with this kind of thing would always throw me off. I'd always crash or flip over. And so to travel with Kelsey and, you know, and his dad was amazing because we were able to group up as a 4. All of us were having issues. All of us were helping each other. Earlier that day, you know, there was some resistance to helping us. And then when we started traveling together, we realized that we all were very valuable to each other. And so it kind of like bridged this gap of, oh, it's just a couple women out there, you know, we're not going to babysit them. But when we started actually helping other teams and proved that we could pull our weight, I think that we gained quite a bit of respect, and we've been keeping in touch with those folks. So that was a big deal, you know, to actually gain respect of people who, these guys are from Hopedale. So they're from that remote area up by Nain. If you look behind me, you know, Nain's up here.
Okay.
Hopedale's kind of down on the coast a bit. So they're not on a road system. They're used to this remote riding. They know how to do it. And to gain their respect was something that I'll never forget, to gain their friendship. We definitely worked together. The camaraderie was amazing. The best story of camaraderie, though, that I can tell you is when we left Nain, we had heard through the grapevine that Team 67, I believe, was actually going to wait for us. And they said, we're going to get these girls home. And we didn't really feel like we needed somebody like following us or babysitting us or anything, but we thought it was really nice that these guys waited. So we left Nain, went through Natuashish, headed out towards the west side. Like if you look behind me, so it might be backwards here, but this is kind of going towards the west side over towards Border Beacon. And they were actually going to wait for us at Border Beacon. And we come across them, and their rails are folded up.
Oh my gosh.
And around. I mean, I wish I had gotten a picture. Like, Coreen, why didn't you have me get a picture? But their rails were bent up and around. They were destroyed. That sled was not going any further. That thing needed to get towed out, right? And so we stopped, and they said, we weren't going to wait for you guys. We were really excited to ride with you guys. And, you know, that was kind of like a really poignant moment that people started to realize that we were not just a joke. We weren't just a couple of females out there like trying to survive, which we honestly were, or I honestly was. But, you know, we pull up and they said, we really want to travel with you guys. Why don't you guys take all of our gas? Okay, so we ended up taking their gas, which was a great idea because there was some miscommunication with us and Jason and Terry, who were actually following behind. We thought they were ahead of us and were staging fuel for us. So it was a real blessing that we actually ran into Team 67. It was unfortunate that they busted their sled so bad. I asked him, I said, what'd you do? What'd you hit? And he said, I don't know. He must hit something hard to bend the rails that bad because I want some pictures from that. Yeah. But he actually gave us all their gas, or most of their gas, I should say. And they headed back. We kept going. We didn't have to worry about meeting up with Jason anymore. We had finally figured out that they were behind us and not in front of us, Jason, that is. And they went back and they ended up running into Jason, almost running out of gas. And Jason was able to give them gas to get back to where they needed to be. So the camaraderie and like the coordination that wasn't even intended, it just fell into place. It was like this magical moment that everything just worked out very, very serendipitously.
Nice, nice. So I got a question here in the chat. Somebody, Vicky Chapman Mathis. So I don't know if you know who
Hi,
that is or not.
Vicky.
So
Yep.
wants to know how much of the race is over water, and did you ever drop through any water? Did you hit any open water? And then she also wants to know after that about the polar bear, right? So there was a polar bear sighting, or there was a close call with a polar bear. So first, talk about the water versus
So I
no
can
water.
answer about the water because
Okay.
that kind of also touches upon kind of the Iron Dog versus Cains Quest race. So I would get to checkpoints, they'd be like, "Oh, there's water ahead," and I'd be thinking to myself, "Okay, open water." And a lot of the times, what has been what happened this year, I don't know how it's been in the past, and I don't know how it's going to be in the future, but water was actually just like really thick overflow, which is still very dangerous.
Okay.
We did not encounter any actual water skipping, which is something that we encounter on a regular basis in Iron Dog, where we're water skipping. I've water skipped 8 miles straight
Wow.
on Iron Dog, like literally open water, 4 foot deep over the ice shelf, tidal water. Cains Quest is more of like a very, if you're told you're going to encounter water, it's this slush.
Which
It's
is
the
worse.
stuff that will, it is. It's
It
much
is.
harder,
Like
much harder to ride through.
Yeah, like
Harder to ride
I've
through.
water skipped and I've gone through slush, both accidentally, but I can tell you
Mhm.
that like water you can actually gain traction and speed on, where
Yes.
slush is almost
Yes.
impossible. It's like quicksand, it
Yes.
wants to suck you in.
Yes, sleds want to run on water. Like I highly encourage people who have the safety knowledge and have people around them who have done it before to go and try water racing, watercross, because it's actually really, really fun to run across open water. What's not fun is running across slush because
Yep.
it's this indescribable feeling where you can't control your speed through it because what it'll do is it'll suck you in.
Yeah.
And so we ran across some of that when we left Border. It wasn't Border Beacon. We actually met up with one of our fueling crews just south of Border Beacon, and they said, "Yeah, there's water issues. You're going to have to, go around some of this." And it ended up being a lot of overflow. A lot of teams had gone around, so we were able to find good routes around. But that was one of the big differences is we'd never actually had to water skip open water on Cains Quest, but we did have to. You'd come across in pitch black, and Coreen would radio me. She'd be like, "Water." And I'd already be right behind her and already into it and just wondering how long it was because you couldn't see how far it was. And that can be very dangerous. You can get in way worse a situation by getting stuck in that slush than
Yeah.
you can in most other things. I mean, besides drowning, right? But that was a big difference where the water, when people would warn you of that, it was something different than what I expected. And
Right.
it ended up working out great, though, because Coreen would always let me know through the radio system that we had what was coming up. So I had it kind of easy. I knew what was coming.
All right. So who's going to talk about the polar bear?
I guess I'll tell the polar bear story.
All right.
So leading up to the race, and we did some live chats, people had asked a question online about, is there polar bears in Labrador? And I said, yeah, there's polar bears in Labrador. There's always the possibility of seeing them along the coast of Labrador during the race. It's not extremely common, but they exist. And Rebecca's like, should we bring a gun? I'm like, no, you can't bring a gun.
I'm
There's
an
no
Alaskan.
firearm
We
protection.
carry guns everywhere.
They're going down to 7-Eleven and they're
she's
carrying
like-
guns.
Yeah, so she thought she needed to be, packing to protect us on this race. And,
I got a new pocket knife that's very sharp, and I sharpened it just for the polar bears.
So,
I'm sure the
she
polar
had
bear.
this thought about, okay,
I'm sure the polar bear was really scared of your knife. Like,
Right in the eyeball. That's what I was going to aim for, the eyeball.
all right, sorry, Coreen. This is too funny of a story not to
No,
keep
it's
interrupting.
okay.
So it's all you. Go
Well,
back to.
I mean, before Green, just for badness, there's some friends of ours that live on the coast. They're allowed to actually, as a traditional hunt for some of the native people, they're actually allowed to harvest polar bears.
Okay.
In the communities. And some of the friends of ours actually were successful in harvesting polar bears this season. So as they would, they'd show off the bear. Like, I mean, one of our buddies was an actual, he was a racing team in Cains Quest. He got a 9-foot bear, right? And so I'm taking these pictures and I'm sending them to everybody. Like, look at this. Well, one less you got to worry about, things like that, right? But
Yeah.
it kind of put it in perspective. Like, holy crap, you got a 9 and 10-foot bear out there on the ice, and but.
Well, the
Yeah.
other thing is that they're coming so much further south. So if you look at the map of Alaska compared to Labrador, Labrador is actually significantly further south. The northern end is like, there is Arctic Circle area, but we don't have polar bears anything below the Arctic Circle. We rarely see them. If they are seen, they're usually a breed between like a grizzly bear and a polar bear. And so we don't see them very often on anything that we do around here. And I just got a message from somebody in Labrador that they just found polar bear tracks down by Lanceloop, which is where I was telling you we almost accidentally went to in Quebec instead of Lance Eau Claire, which is way down. I don't know if you can see, but it's way down on the south end of the map here.
Okay.
So the polar bears in Labrador are coming way further south than they would in Alaska. So to know that was something that we could interact with was something that I was not happy with.
So, Coreen, is there more to the story, or is that the extent of the story? Did you actually see one or come close to one?
So we had left Red Bay and we're heading up the coast, and we ended up getting stuck. The both of us got stuck coming up off of the sea ice over a neck of land, and 2 of us got stuck. So we're there digging ourselves out and flipping the sled over, and two teams showed up and helped us get out and whatnot. So then we get going another neck of land, and when we get up on the other neck of land, I could see old tracks in the snow right along the race trail. So I didn't say anything to Rebecca. I didn't tell her, I think, until we got to Riglet. Maybe I told her, I said, did you see the polar bear tracks on the south coast? And she's like, no. And I said, well, the next neck of land after we got stuck, there was polar bear tracks. They were old tracks. They weren't new tracks, so no big deal. But it turns out one of the other race teams, the lead sled stopped on the ice to wait for his buddy. And where he stopped, he seen polar bear tracks, but they were fresh tracks. And when he looked to his left, the polar bear was there. So he just started his sled and kept going. So polar bears did exist while we were in the vicinity, but we didn't see any. But I refrained from telling her about it.
Well, so I played up like I was afraid of polar bears, which I really don't want to interact with them if I don't, because I'm from Alaska. I carry a 44 mag everywhere I go, when I go hiking, anywhere.
On your dates?
More on my dates than on my. I finally found a good man, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. But I always carry my 44
Let me
mag.
guess. Dating websites in Alaska on Tinder or whatever, they're all holding guns in the air. Is that how that works up there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I got off Tinder because I was like, everybody's picture's the same. So I always carry my 44 mag, and we had a conversation before because I had seen a little post about how there are polar bears in the area, and it blew my mind that polar bears come that far south out east. And so the other really interesting part about it is that as we've been, we've created a lot of friendships. Like that's one of the biggest things that I can say about the race out there is that if I was Canadian, I'd live in Labrador. These people are amazing. So we've bonded a lot. I speak on a daily basis with many of these people out east, and they're sharing pictures of, they know that I have like the polar bear thing, which I'm not super scared of polar bears as long as I have my gun with me, but sure don't want to stab one in the eye. Don't want to get into that. But they've been sharing pictures of all the polar bears sightings that have been going on right where we were. I mean, right where we were. Like I said, I just looked on the Facebook Live on the chat stream that you have going on, And they're saying that they were down in the most southern part that we were in. So it was, I'm glad we didn't see one.
So I'm guessing that the polar bears, it was local knowledge by the polar bear, like all the polar bears were talking to each other and saying, Rebecca Charles from Alaska is here. Like, you guys all need to be afraid, go hide in the woods, right? So they were probably more afraid of you. Yeah, they were afraid of you.
I mean, there's so many conspiracies going on right now in the world. So that's just another one, right?
There you go. So there's a question here, or a comment that Mr. Scott Campbell wants you guys to tell a story about a MacGyver incident with an ice scratcher. So tell us about the MacGyver ice scratcher incident.
Oh, yeah. So that was pretty cool. Actually, it really sucked, to be honest with you. It's so funny how now I say, oh, it was so cool. It was so fun. Not fun at the time. Just not cool. So when we were doing that run from
Cartwright to Ringlet,
we went over through Mealy Mountain Range. That was our first 20-hour run. That's when I got to the point where I thought to myself, this is no. That's all that kept going through my head, is this is not happening right now. So we made it through all this with all these stucks. This is when we were traveling with Kelsey and Bennett, Team 65 from Hopedale. And we get almost to Ringlet. And so we're required, because the ice was all open. There was no water. There was no ice. It was all open water. We ended up having to run the Groom Trail, which it actually was a Groom Trail into Ringlet for, I don't know, 20 miles?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? Yeah.
About 23 miles.
I started overheating really, really, really bad because I didn't have my ice scratchers down. So I go and I pop my ice scratchers down, still overheating, realized I had lost one of my scratchers. So Coreen stops and she goes, here. I tell you what, this girl is quite a mount woman. She goes and she cuts a willow branch and she shoves it down. I'll share the picture later on my Facebook page, or onto our team Facebook page and my Facebook page. But she shoves a willow stick down and she says, put your boot up against that and that'll work just as good. So we come into Ringlet with me with a willow branch jammed down it. I never would have even thought to do that. Genius. Awesome. Genius. Yeah. I'm sure that that's something that they've probably experienced before. Up here, we all run studs, so you don't necessarily need ice scratchers. I haven't run ice scratchers in years and years and years over Iron Dog, even over no snow conditions, low snow, no snow. Those studs throw up enough in there. But we're running these paddle tracks that don't allow you to have these studs on. Yeah. So to have Kareem go and just cut off a willow branch real quick, stick it in my running board and say, put your foot up against that, and just kind of say, just hold on to that stick. It'll work good. Made it into Ringlet, pull up to Jason, and I looked down and I said, you see what we got going on here? And he wasn't even phased. I thought he'd be impressed. Not even phased. He's like, yeah.
He's like, we do that when we go trail riding. That's all that's
do. He's like, yeah. But awesome. So, that little bit of ingenuity, I learned a lot. I learned so much about, I always pride myself on being a great backcountry rider, being somebody who's not real fast. I'm not a racer. I'm not somebody who likes to compete. I'm somebody who likes to go on the adventure. And then to learn these little things that I never even thought about, very simple. That's such a simple thing that you can do. Yeah. It didn't even occur to me to do that until Coreen got on the sled and was like, here, do this,
I never would have thought of that, and I guarantee I'll steal it someday. So I'll be using that someday.
Yeah. So I learned a lot about my ego on this race. I learned a lot about understanding the fact that these guys, they're backcountry. They're legitimate backcountry riders. They're not going and they are going and putting their sleds into the best condition they can be before they can go, but they're also able to deal with any kind of situation that comes up and just we'll just do this. So that was very impressive to me. That was a moment when I realized that Coreen had something that was very special. She had that ability to make those really easy decisions for her. It was just a natural thing. It's something that obviously she had done before. So for me, I learned a lot of lessons from Coreen, and that was one of the big ones. I guarantee you, next Iron Dog, if we have low snow, I'm going to go cut willow branches for people and do the same thing, just so I can, like, you know, pass on that knowledge, because I never even thought about doing that.
Nice.
Ice scratchers work better, but that's definitely a fallback plan. You got to use a hardwood stick, by the way.
Yeah, well, my sled was running. It was very weird. So my sled was running. Let me take a step back. So I flipped over my sled at least 8 million times on that 20-hour run. So I think what happened is I ended up getting an air bubble in the line for the coolant. I also believe that the snow was the conditions where it was really packing in. So we would make sure that we cleaned out our tunnel and everything. But it's really hard to get up into the radiator area and make sure that that radiator is cleaned out. So I think that that radiator was just caked in ice. And I think that I had an air bubble in my line because it eventually worked itself out, right?
Okay.
But to see those elevated temperatures that are 20, 30, 40 degrees hotter than my teammate's sled that has an identical sled, I knew that there was something going on with my sled. But to take just a piece of wood off the side of the trail,
nice,
and have Coreen just took control of the situation and made sure it happened. We made it into Riglet, and
Very
it was
nice.
Jason got a great picture of it, and it was a memory that I'll never forget. It's those little things, you know, in these big races. It's not the big picture. It's those little things that, like, kind of touch your heart, that you go back and look through, because obviously I've been spending a lot of time thinking about the race and going through pictures and slowly, like, kind of just trying to absorb everything that happened. And that was one of the big moments take one little stick and it can save your day.
Absolutely. So, Jason, acknowledging up front here that we are having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but I want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit of a story of, and I think it's just a connectivity thing. I think it's a little bit of, the internet connection is probably not quite fast enough for some reason in the room you're in, but I want to give you an opportunity.
It's because Kareem always takes over
taking over the bandwidth.
He's next to the modem.
Really? Wow. Yeah. So real quick, though, I want to have anything that you want to highlight from a support crew perspective, anything that happened behind the scenes, maybe it's the near miss with and having to give gas to the other person, or how, things didn't get coordinated. I don't know. Did you guys on your own side have any emergencies? And again, it's maybe not even your crew, but some of the other crews. Like, I think in our previous conversation, someone referenced, like, there was an avalanche at one point that someone's sled got hit with too. I don't think it was on your guys' team, but another team that got hit with an avalanche. But anything you want to highlight for your own team, or just other things you heard about from support crew perspective that everybody should be aware of?
For us, everything went fairly smooth. When the girls got into Lanticlaire, I knew our support crew truck wasn't going to make it there in time. There was a snowstorm that the girls just talked about as they were entering that area. Our truck, I mean, they were slowed down to like 10 mile an hour, 5 mile an hour, like they were crawling. And I put a shout out to the people in that community because I was farther north. I didn't go to that south coast route. Okay. And I put a shout out, and a girl, Kayla Beals, she replied right away and said, I'm in the area. I said, our support crew may be an hour or two behind the girls, but can you meet them, make sure that they're good? If they need anything, can you help them out as best you can until our support crew gets there?
Funny story, though, related to that, though, is that they got Kayla all hooked up with us, but we didn't know that. And so we made loops around the town looking for our trailer. And Kayla kept running up to us, and we were like, no, we got to find our support crew.
Oh, no.
Making loops and kept making loops and, like, kept passing her. And finally she stopped Coreen. She's like, I'm your support crew. I mean, the amount of coordination it took between people was incredible. And Kayla was amazing.
It's amazing.
like with that, she helped out tremendously when our support crew couldn't get there. Like I mentioned before, myself and Terry, we done almost half the race on snowmobile. The girls have mentioned that we ended up being behind them. We were supposed to be in front of them to stage gas. We ended up being behind. The reason for that, I actually broke the tow hitch off the sled that I was riding. And between the two of us, we were towing 50 gallons of gas between the two of us. And, they had mentioned, just to put it in perspective, people pre-run parts of the race route. As long as there's no big storms, this is pre-run. When I say they pre-run it with super wide tracks. And they don't pick the best route. They just, okay, I got to get from here to here. So that's where this kind of weaving around the trees go. And they go up a hill and whatever, right? So once these sleds get through, most people run 154s with a 2-inch paddle. That seems to be the go-to sled for Cains Quest.
Okay.
So, you got these sleds going up these hills, and, these are pretty substantial. Some of these hills are, maybe 800-900 foot elevation change,
Wow.
right? So you got these mountain sleds just tearing them up, and Rebecca mentioned about these trenches. So we're going through there with sleds in tow with 50 gallons of gas between the two of us. So I break my hitch off, and we actually had to carry, we had them in 6-gallon jerry cans. We actually had to carry every damn jerry can up the hill, like take the slide hook rope, pull it up. The machines went up fine. They just couldn't go up with the slides, right? So that's where we got delayed, and I splinted the hitch up with some sticks and kind of lashed it together to continue. But it put us behind a little bit, behind the girls, and that's one of the reasons why we missed them. And it kind of worked out. It was more of a precautionary for us to be in that area. They should have made it for gas, but it was as a safety factor, right? And luckily, like as they mentioned, they came across that other team that helped them out, and in turn, we helped them out. So it worked out. Some of those remote areas, there was this part of a support crew. There was a small avalanche. It buried half the sled. The entire race was cold this year. When I say cold, we're minus 30 Celsius to minus 40, daytime. Nighttime, the last night of the race, Rebecca talked about it being cold and on the border of being hypothermic.
No. Legitimately hypothermic.
Like it was, I don't know the actual temperature. I mean, obviously there's no service or anything, but I mean, growing up in Labrador, I know when it's cold. I've done a lot of going. When your windshield frosts over on the inside, your heated visors, even though they're working, doesn't stay clear. When
all of your lines, your heated goggle lines snap off, your rubberized lines snap. Coreen's line snapped in half.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was really cold throughout the race, so that that made a lot of challenges with electronics. I mean, we had inReach systems. Our inReach would say critical low temperature shutting down. It would not run.
Yeah.
Our GPS units, critical low temperatures, they shut down. So that posed challenges for the support crew and obviously the racers, right?
Yeah.
So one of the other things that we did as a support crew, because of the vast land and the cost and the time and the manpower it takes to be everywhere, we actually teamed up a little bit this year, and we've done it in the past as well. So Team 22, Team Maine, it was Rob Gardner and John Guillaume Coyne. We provided gas for them in one of the checkpoints in an area, in a remote area. And, they had guys staged, like the girls talked about, just south of Border Beacon. And, that's something that we didn't have the manpower and the cost literally to bring in 10 gallons of gas to ensure that you make it closer to a civilization. You know, it costs, you're looking at 2 days of travel. You're looking at hundreds of dollars in gas, guys putting on the line. They had guys in there that were in a tent. It was close on -50. And those guys were sleeping in a
And they
tent.
made the best sandwiches.
Oh my God, we had the best breakfast sandwiches, and they forced us to drink water. They made us take off our helmets. They were literally, Dixon Clements was literally holding our gear over the wood stove to warm it up for us.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's another camaraderie story, is that,
Yeah.
you team up with other teams. I mean, and everybody wants to help everybody. Nobody wants to see anybody fail.
Exactly.
And so that moment of being out there in that tent with Dixon was like, don't you think, Coreen, that was like one of the highlights of my race, was sitting there and telling the story. And like, Dixon had familiarity with Iron Dog, so we had some conversations about that. And it was really amazing to have them there and to feed us, because they basically force fed us.
So like those guys, again, they're friends of ours, like Dixon Clements and John McGraw and Dion Hancock. I actually raced in 2015 with Dixon and supported him in 2018 when he raced as a part of Team Maine in 22. So there's always that, it's crazy how this race, even though it's a race, people help each other. It brings people together. I have a tremendous amount of friends from Maine that I wouldn't have never met. We wouldn't have never met if it wasn't for this race. One of our sponsors this year is Chad Dell. He's the owner of Nitro Trailers. He provided us with a pretty sweet snowmobile trailer to get all our gear all around Labrador. And, he was a past racer that we raced alongside. I was upside down in the brook, and he came along with his partner at the time. That's how I met him. And, they helped us out of this brook in 2012. That's when Coreen and I raced.
Nice.
It's pretty crazy, really. There's really a down to the last day when people kind of start to, okay, she's game on, guys.
Yeah.
But outside of that, people, it's amazing that it's a race and people will stop and pull a ski or stop and if you're stuck a little bit and they look at it and you're like, you okay? And you give them the thumbs up. Yeah, I got to dig my sled out, but they're going to go, but if you're stuck, you're buried or you're in a brook, or people stop and they'll the girls spent over an hour helping a team out of a brook.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be a race, right? But
I really think that that's one of the reasons that we were able to get the help that we did in the future, because I don't want to use kind of it's kind of inappropriate to say it this way, but I kind of feel like maybe people thought that we were kind of a joke or kind of just like, yeah, they won't make it, or kind of downplaying it. And then when we were able to help that other team out of the brook and continue on, and Coreen found somebody's hatchet and returned their mandatory gear to them. And, we just kind of, as we went through the race, we made sure that not only did we make it right with every racer out there, we never left anybody. Coreen always stopped and talked to every single person she saw on the trail. Even when we were coming to the finish and we were coming down to the time frame, she made sure she stopped to George and said, hey, how you doing? Why don't you come with us? Returning gear, helping people out of creeks. I think that we actually showed that we're not just a couple of chicks out on the trail just needing help all the time. I think that we really showed that we could also help them. So we ended up not only gaining respect for ourselves, but gaining respect for the future women who go out there, because now people are going to have a different perspective. They're not going to come into it thinking, we're going to have to baby the girls out of this. Because there was one situation in particular where I remember where one team was a little bit resistant to helping us. But another team told them that they had to help, and we ended up helping that team in the future. So it kind of ended up being this thing where we built a lot of respect for our ability to also help those people. So we hope that the women in the future do the same thing, that they're very respectful of the race. They're very respectful of the other racers. They check on people, because you can be a racer and just go right by and say, piss off, you know.
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of you. That's not at all what I experienced out there, coming from somewhere else, you know, not knowing these folks personally before this. It was definitely a lot of camaraderie out there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, my life situations, right? Like you get into a situation where the co-ed racing like you have there too. The way you describe that and the way I would internalize it just from my own life experiences, I think, speaking for myself as I look at an all-female race being in a race like this, and if I was competing against you, to some degree, my resistance to help you would be to make sure that feel like you're an independent racer in a race group, right? I think, it's, I don't want to give you the crutch of saying like, well, the only reason you finished is because I helped you, right? Like I want you to feel good about your race. So that's kind of, I think, maybe how people's mindset starts. But the fact that you guys stopped, helped others, and showed that you're willing to chip in and give a hand too, that immediately changed that dynamic. So that's how I interpret that internally and personally. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that or not too, but I see that type of thing happen in the world a lot, right? And regardless of this race or just competition as a whole, is, as a man, I don't want to take anything away from you. And so if I help you, am I taking something away from you? I think there's a question that sometimes goes unanswered there that in some situations you don't ever get the answer to. But in this situation, I think it all worked out perfectly. It's pretty amazing to hear the whole story and how it came together. So maybe a unique perspective, maybe not, but just something to think about.
Well, it's also something that you experience on Iron Dog. Like, if you have an issue, people are going to stop to help you.
Yeah.
That's just the way that the racing community is in these endurance races. They're very respectful to make sure that nobody wants to be the person who left somebody behind.
Amen.
So it's not something that's typical that somebody will just leave you behind. And if they do, they get a reputation for that. And there are some people who have reputations for that. But, for me individually, and I know Coreen is the same way because I watched, Coreen was out in front and she stopped for every person. The safety of the people out there is way more important than any race that could ever be. And we were in a lot of issues, a lot of situations where, other people say, one team was ready to scratch. Basically, we pulled up to them. I keep saying I'm going to upload this GoPro footage. I'm still trying to figure out how I want to edit it though. Because it's actually pretty good footage. A lot of interesting conversation, a lot of interesting strategery to get these sleds out. But you just got to stop. You got to help people and screw the race. It's about us all just being in this together. Like I said, I'm not a racer, so it really doesn't bother me much. Maybe somebody who's more competitive, it might kind of like weigh on them that they helped somebody for an hour. Yeah. For me, it was something that I was really happy to actually. Coreen helped more than I did. I actually got undressed and stripped down a little bit while she was helping them out. But to help other teams was something that was it was really cool to be able to do that. It was really cool to be able to prove that we're not here just to suck off of you. We're here to also be out here. We're co-competitors. We're contributors. We're not going to go past you if you're in a really screwed up situation. There's no way. And then it also ties into the fact that, when we pulled into every checkpoint, we lost a lot of time, but don't regret it at all because there were so many people who were so pumped to see us come through these checkpoints. You might have seen videos of, say, like today, I reviewed the footage from Makovic where the women's hockey team was there, and we got basically escorted into and took pictures with the teams in Makovic. There was nowhere where we ever turned down a conversation, a hug, chatting with somebody, taking a picture with kids. We never, ever, ever turned down one person, including at the finish line when we were encouraged to walk away because it would take us forever to get out of the finish line. We never turned down one person. And so that was something that we felt at least I did, and I'm sure Coreen feels the same way, that was kind of one of our values. Is it's that these fans, these people who are out there, these people who come out in the cold to come and see us finish or to come see us come through a checkpoint, that was very important. That was a very driving motivation, and we were not going to ever say no to taking a picture or or
My guess is it speaks a lot to the reason you have such a big following. Like, this show, the entire time we've had nearly 100 or more viewers at any given time, which, when we close this out, I suspect we're going to have a couple of thousand views already just because of the show we're doing right now. So that's a good kickoff for this, and it'll continue to grow. So we are quite a lot of time into this. We're an hour, 20 minutes in, which is my longest show ever. You guys have set a new record, 4 people at a time, 100 hour and 20 minutes, but it's such a good show.
We haven't even started yet.
I know, we got such good content going. I'm just going to keep going, right? Like, if you guys are good with it, we'll just keep rolling with this. I'm going to go ahead, Jason.
Sorry. If just before we clue up, like, I just wanted to say, your viewers, if they're thinking about doing the race, it really helps to get in contact with previous racers, just to get some knowledge. And it's very important, to have a good backing, like we did with, your local dealers. Just little tweaks on the snowmobiles. We had here in New Brunswick, we had JT Power Sports in Miramichi, New Brunswick. We were new to the area. We approached them, said, "Hey, we're doing this," and they were like, "Oh crap, we want to get behind you on this." And they were there for us from day one. With any questions, tremendous amount of parts, good deals on the sleds, things like that, right? But it really, helps to talk to people and really know what you're getting into first, because it is a long, hard race. And, Cains Quest does a great job of being as safe as it can. They have helicopters in the air, they have paramedics in the helicopters, but those helicopters don't fly at night. And you run 24/7. Like I said, at minus 40, if you did go in the water, you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or your life is at risk, because people can't get to you, right?
Yeah, and as a reminder for all of us people south of the Canadian border here, negative 40 Celsius is the exact same temperature as negative 40 Fahrenheit, right? Yeah,
it's cold.
Yeah, it's freaking cold.
It made it really easy for me to know what temperature it was, because they were like, "Oh, it's 40 below." I'm like, "Okay, I know exactly what that is."
Yeah, exactly.
The big thing is that a lot of people don't understand the difference between the humid environment of the East Coast. And, I'm talking to these guys, we're training in New Brunswick. I actually had some issues with my gear being too light because I run uninsulated gear in Alaska. We're very, very dry up here. Yeah. Our humidity is below 15%, 99% of the time. We really don't have high humidity. And so went out, trained in New Brunswick, was very, very cold. Klein actually made sure to get us some heavier gear, and so we did that, and I was still frozen because not because of lack of gear, but just because the weather on that East Coast is so cold. So the big thing is to remember that if you're riding in a different area, make sure you account not just for the temperature, but that you understand the humidity levels, and then that could really impact the way that you dress, the way that you layer. When you saw us come into the finish line, there's some pictures I know of both of us, where we have frost all over our jackets. I've never experienced that in Alaska, where you actually see frost on your jackets. We get our eyelashes are frozen, or people's beards are frozen up, but I've never experienced that kind of humidity before, that kind of cold, wet weather. So gear is very important, and I think that we found the right gear. I just think that the weather was so extreme. 40 below here isn't 40 below there, Yeah. It's kind of one of these things that you have to really be prepared for, which I was not. It was pretty freaky to get hypothermic on the way back.
Yeah, Coreen, tell us a little bit about face tape and the amount of face tape that you guys went through on this trip. I want to make sure you get some more time in on the camera here.
Oh, I'm good at listening too. So face tape is a new thing to me. Honestly, I've never taped my face prior to meeting Rebecca. I've seen the guys do it. Some of the guys from the States have done it in the past, but I think we went through 6 rolls of face tape, if I'm not mistaken, but very valuable. especially when you're wearing open face, goggles, you get a little bit of air coming in around the edges. And with the cold temperatures that we experience, you're guaranteed to get frostbite. And if people get a chance to go back to the Cains Quest website and look at videos or pictures of other racers during this race, you'll see the guys are scarred. A lot of guys are scarred on their faces due to the frostbite. So the face tape was a really good addition for us. There was actually a point where, because we have a lot of technical riding through trees, you actually get really, really warm. So my face tape was sweating off of my face, because then I had heated goggles over the top of that. But all in all, I honestly don't think I would ride without it in a race situation like that again. Definitely. And to Jason's point about anybody who's considering running Cains Quest or truly has an interest in it, my biggest recommendation is give yourself a chance on a support team. Get a feel for what the race is like from a support crew perspective before you throw all the money at it, because it is the best way to experience the race, to experience Labrador, to see the backside of the race.
Hey, thanks for the advice ahead of Coreen.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There was only so many things we could do the first time around. So,
well, Rebecca, in their defense, they already were an experienced crew bringing you in, and so I think you were taken care of pretty darn well. It sounds like so.
Well, that was one of the biggest challenges that I, not to take away from Coreen talking right now, but that was one of the biggest challenges that I experienced. I had kind of a drama queen moment, and a large drama queen moment in Lance Eau Claire, because I did not know what was going on, and I was freaking out and saying, hey, I need to know exactly what's going on. I'm used to being in control of everything that I do. And I just kept being told, don't worry, it's taken care of. Don't worry, it's being taken care of. And finally, when I let everything go and trusted that our support crew had things in order, everything went a lot smoother. When I tried to control the situation, when I tried to know what was going on all the time, it's just impossible. This is the amount of coordination that's required for Cains Quest with the support crew is so far above and beyond anything that I've ever experienced. I'm a very individual person. I like to be with just my teammate, and just, one of my highlights is when Coreen and I were in Nain by ourselves. And it's not because we didn't want to be around the support crew, but my comfort level, that's where it was. But these support crew folks, they had everything dialed down to a T, where literally now if I were to run it again, highly unlikely, but childbirth, you never know what you're going to do in the future, right? If I were to run it again in the future, I would know that the support crew has everything under control, and then I can actually relax. But I was very stressed out about the fact that I did not know every single in and out of what was going on. Literally, we'd show up places and there'd be, I think we left, did we leave Cartwright? And we ended up with 22 support crew at the end of the bay. Yeah. And they fueled us up there. I stopped and I said to Coreen, I said, what's going on? And she goes, oh, we have to pick up fuel here. And I looked at her, I was like, I didn't know this is happening. So a lot of Cains Quest is just trusting your support crew, trusting your team manager who's definitely planned out everything that they needed to plan out. Nice. And you just kind of, it's this weird mix of this Iron Dog independent stuff, and then this snow cross, stepping out of the trailer, taking your jacket off, getting on the sled. It was just this weird dichotomy of those two different environments completely blending 100%. Nice. So it was really great to have the support crew, and I wish that I had known then what I know now about trusting them so much.
Yeah, no, nice. So, Coreen, did you have any more on the face tape? Otherwise, I could have a question about, goggles versus full face helmets. I noticed you guys were wearing goggles and open helmets, motocross style helmets, but I saw a lot of the other people coming across the finish lines in the videos wearing full face helmets with just windshields. So, would you do it any different this time, or was there an advantage your version versus their version, you think?
One of the advantages for the snowcross helmet, a lot of people see them as a colder helmet, but if you put your cold weather liner in it, you got a good balaclava, test your setup, like really test it. The thing about a closed face helmet, if you lose your heated visor, you have very little options. All of a sudden you have a face shield that is fogging up and you can't see. At least with goggles, we could switch out goggles if we needed to, and lighting conditions as well. Like Rebecca had mentioned, on the last day when we were heading to the finish line, we came across another team, and George was actually experiencing an iced up visor, freezing his face, riding with it open at these, minus 40 and below. And I offered him a pair of goggles, keep riding with us. Let's keep going. We'll get to the finish line. So in 2012, I actually bought 2 closed face helmets with heated visor and sun visor in it. And I ended up riding a snowcross just because of comfort and temperatures and whatnot. And I got really used to riding with a snowcross at that point. So the advantages, with the right setup, you can run that helmet and not get cold. With the closed face, I worry about things breaking and not being able to exchange the part.
Yeah.
So
a big thing as well. The girls ran the F3 climb helmets, and they're tremendously lighter than some of the guys for the auction helmets through BRP or the older modular helmets. They're on snowmobile for 18 to 22 hours straight.
Yeah.
Right. Having an extra, whether it's only a couple of ounces on your head is a lot.
Yeah.
When you're, especially when you're battling fatigue. I mean, you fall asleep on a snowmobile at 20 hours. Right? I mean, your head.
they're like a bobblehead.
Yeah.
Right? And
not to mention is I had I actually broke my neck in a snow machine incident in 2011, and so every year in Iron Dog, one of our support crew members, who's my Iron Dog teammate Dennis Waldorf, he knows my breakdown point. He knows exactly when my neck is going out. The F3 helmets from Climb, they were so light, they were so comfortable with the liner inside, with the face tape. I ran double balaclavas. My head never got cold the entire time, but also my neck didn't struggle. Like I did not have the neck or back pain. So, kind of touching upon what Jason said is you can wear like this heavy ass helmet. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting, especially if you have a pre-existing condition. So I think we made the right choice in helmets. What do you guys think?
I think so. A lot of the guys were amazed when they seen our helmet and were like, lift the helmet. They couldn't believe how light it was. But it was great. Like it definitely relieved that neck fatigue, and the weight.
Again, it just, the helmets, they're all good helmets. It's just more of a personal preference and, what is more accustomed to you and your riding style. And, some guys can put a helmet on and it doesn't really fatigue their neck or it doesn't bother them, right? But, the flexibility, like switching out goggles if you need to. Goggle technology has come so far.
Thank God for the heated goggles.
I bet.
Compared to what they used to. Switching lenses, it takes like literally a minute to switch out lenses if you needed to in a pair of goggles, or literally take them off, which you can do with extended glove boxes. You can put them in there. There's heat in there. If they're froze up, you put them in, take out a new set, and you go back and forth, right? I mean, it gives you more options, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So honestly, we didn't change goggles at all, though.
No.
We were actually the helmets that we had were purchased through Valley Imaging and Stan James up here in Alaska, and we're super grateful for that. We actually had a really, really, really good setup until Coreen's cord snapped off on the way to the finish, just due to the extreme cold, and we have a spare, so we were able to plug her in. Okay. That was the only issue we had. Mine, I think that I just wasn't able to plug them in all the way, so I was having a little bit of issue. But the heated goggles, the F3 helmet, A+.
Awesome. So I've got a comment here. Kayla Beal says a lot of Labradorians from my area said that you were the team that they were cheering for. I was amazed at how much support you two had at the. I'm gonna butcher this. Lance Eclair.
Lance Eau Claire.
Lance Eclair checkpoint.
Oh,
There
right
were
here. So
there.
if you look
There
at
you
the
go.
map, Lance
All
Eau
right,
Claire is
down
this
there.
is
Said there.
down here, the southern side of the map.
She says there was almost a dozen women out there in the cold at negative 30 degrees, shivering just to come across the two of you guys. So
Yep, and it was kind of funny because when we pulled in there, that was where we had actually like circled around the village a bunch of times trying to find our support crew, and Kayla finally waves us down. No, I'm your support crew. They couldn't make it. I'm your person. And Kayla, thank you. You're amazing. And thank God for our climb gear, because I know I was sweating. I had my jacket zipped all the way down, and I actually they were like, "Aren't you cold?" And I said, "No, like feel my chest right here." And I was sweating. So we had great gear. The people who came out to see us, they really suffered through a lot of very cold weather. Every checkpoint we went to, right, Coreen? Every single checkpoint we went to, I have never felt like such a rock star. I mean,
We
numerous
had
people.
amazing cheerleading squads.
Amazing. I mean, it was like it was so surreal because we weren't winning the race, we but every time we'd get to a checkpoint, there'd be these huge crowds.
yep.
And it was so inspiring to see that we were doing something that meant something to somebody else, even
That's
though
awesome.
like I personally felt that my performance was lacking, and I felt like we could be doing better if I was doing better. Every time we pulled into a checkpoint, people were so proud of us, and they were just huge groups of people, huge, mostly women and children. To be honest with you, there were men there, but
Yeah.
the women just came out and were just. I don't know if that's typical. Is that typical, Coreen, when you ran last time, where there were like a ton of women around?
No, I think it was too new back then. It wasn't as big of a deal.
Nice. So, quick question from Vicky Chapman again: Is there a recommendation on engine size for this race? I guess question 600, 800, 850. Like, what's your recommendations on engine size? Okay.
50,
Okay.
850. Yeah, you're not going to do it on a 600. You can take a 600 out there and you'll make it probably 5 feet.
There we go. So that pretty much wraps up any questions we have in the comments. Other than that, there's just a ton of comments out there saying congratulations to you guys. Thanks for sharing the story tonight and all those kind of things. And so we're at the point in the show where I want to kind of just do one final recap. And I'm sure somebody in the group here has some people they want to thank, right? Whether it be sponsors, support crew members, or otherwise. And I'm just going to call it out for you because I guarantee you're going to miss somebody. And unfortunately, I know that's not your intent. But, there's a lot of people that support you, and it's hard to, remember all of them in the moment like we have here now. But, Jason, why don't you go first? Is there anybody that you want to do a shout out to, maybe even a shout out to your wife and Rebecca here for what they've accomplished here potentially?
Yeah, I mean, very, very proud of the girls for completing and doing what we set out to do, and and push through all the hurdles that they were faced. But for me, being a manager, I had a lot of support with some friends, family, and as support crew members. So for me, I want to focus mostly on the people that were there for us that made this race a success, because without them, it wouldn't have never happened. So like for the support crew, myself, Terry Randall, Lindsay Randall, at Labrador City, they provided us with housing. Terry done half the race with me, and Lindsay drove a truck, half the race. Gerard Millier, John Sock, Bruce LeBlanc, Daryl Hickey. Those guys were all over Labrador as well, chasing very little sleep. Wayne Michelin, Dennis Waldorf, and Chris Stokes. Again, Lindsay Randall and Charlene Michelin, they were all over Labrador in pickups, parts, providing the girls with whatever they needed. Joey Dicker and Patty and Danielle Potto and Hopedale. They gave us a place to stay while we were up there. They were backup plan, provided us with fuel. Sean Gear and Chelsea Barber and Nain, again, provided us with fuel up there because logistically we just can't be everywhere. So these people were out there, and of course Kayla, she stepped in to help us out tremendously when we couldn't get there, and that wasn't a plan, but she came through. Again, Team 22, they helped us tremendously. Like Rob Gardner and Andrew Milley, even though he didn't race this year with 22, I relied on those guys tremendously with the sled builds, with rooting, just throwing things back and forth over the years. And, again, the guys that stayed in the tent there when it was 40 or 50 below that were there for 22, but again, for us, so that's Dixon Clemens and John McGraw and Dion Hancock. And, last really but not least, definitely our local dealership here in Miramichi, New Brunswick, JT Power Sports. Without the support of those guys, with the sleds, the spare parts, just making it really come together with the sled. We couldn't have done it without them. So, it takes a tremendous team to pull off what we did, and that's really what the people that I focused on.
Perfect. Rebecca, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, number one, I want to thank Coreen because there were a lot of times where I was just blown away, just frozen. Just so much challenge, just something I've never experienced before. Coreen was always very patient, and one of the best moments that I had on the race was just waking up in Nain, looking over at the other bed and just kind of having a chat and just having that downtime and kind of getting back to the center where we're just like really great friends and just teammates. Coreen was amazing. She led the whole way. Coming into, you travel 5,000 miles, 6,000 miles across the continent, and you're traveling in terrain that you don't know. It'll make anybody want to cry, right?
Yeah.
So Coreen definitely led me through something that taught me to be a better person, taught me what I knew, what I didn't know that I could do. So Coreen is definitely like my hero. Jason helped build our sleds. Basically, he built our sleds. Yes,
Nice.
I was there for a couple weeks and participating in it, but Jason was spearheading all of the sled builds and making sure that he communicated with people about the best ways to do it. Robert Alon, he helped weld up all of the additional parts that we had welded. All of our sponsors, particularly for me, those from Alaska, who didn't really have a lot to gain from sponsoring a team going out to Cains Quest, with it being unproven, with them not knowing about the race. They really provided a lot of financial support. The people of Labrador, I think, is kind of the people I want to thank the most, because and the racers, everybody involved in the race and the people of Labrador, I found a new home. It's so special. And then, to come home, I truly, truly miss them all. I could go on for hours about the people who I owe for this finish, because I still to this day don't truly feel like I deserve to have this finish. I know that that's slightly irrational, but there was just so much that went into it. The support crew was amazing. As I kind of touched on earlier, they took care of things that I never imagined needed to get taken care of when you're exhausted. Yeah, can you zip up my jacket?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big deal. That prevents that hypothermia if they just zip up that jacket a little bit. So those are kind of a small portion of the people that I'd like to thank. I could go on for a long time, but definitely number one is Coreen. I want to thank her for bringing me across. It was really special. This was the biggest thing that I'll ever do in my life. And you know,
you guys got me crying.
I had a lot of ego going into this, and I didn't know what I was in for, and to go through and do it, and to finish, and to go and look at the video that Cains Quest put together, and to see that they included that big hug that Coreen gave me at the finish line. I don't think I'll ever be able to express to anybody how much this all meant to me. This was the biggest thing that I could ever imagine. The biggest challenge I could ever put myself through. I'm still emotionally recovering from it, and figuring out my emotions behind it. But Coreen is definitely the most amazing woman I've ever met. Good God, Jason, I don't know how you deal with all the energy. I'm very thankful for Jason and Coreen for taking me into their family. I'm very thankful for Robert Gardner for having this little bit of faith to hook me up with Coreen. The entire thing is still very emotional for me. Yeah, I really appreciate you helping us get the word out about the race and about our experience, because we could probably talk for another 4 hours.
Well, you said you didn't know how you would ever express what you truly feel, but I would challenge you and say, I think you just did. You've got me crying. I guarantee there's people on the other side crying. There's hearts going on in this thing just crazy. There's almost 600 hearts for this show right now, and 200 of them happened in the last 5 minutes since you were talking. So
it was definitely a spiritual experience, and just to touch upon the fact that the name behind Cain's Quest comes from the Cain and Abel story.
Nice.
Where Cain killed his brother Abel and was sent to a barren land to go and make atonement for his sins. And I'm sure I got a lot of sins in my past, but I felt like it was very poignant that's the story. I didn't know that was the story until about halfway through the race. And I feel like I've been born again. I feel like I'm a different person. I feel like I've come to this understanding of myself that I never knew before. I'm never doing it again. I'm looking forward to going out in 2022, and Robert Gardner's already asked me to help run his support crew, and I can't wait to get back out to Labrador, because those folks are some of wow, I'd live there if I was Canadian. For sure, definitely. I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky this all happened.
Well, let me apologize to Coreen for making you go last and having to follow that. Oh my God. That was the most heartfelt ever.
She won't cry though, which is great.
That's
She's
okay.
Not crying.
But here's what I want to tell everybody. That moment right there is why I do this show. I don't know why I just spent almost 2 hours spending time without, it's because I love the sport. I love what we're doing. I love being involved in things like this. This is my way of being involved in Cain's Quest. There's probably not likely I'm going to be heading up there anytime soon. Heck no would I ever even try to race it. That's just not in my heart and in my blood. But to be part of this and help share the story and the stories that go on within our community and the snowmobile community, that's why I'm here and why I'm involved. And as you can see, I'm, my tears here. I'm a sap for this kind of stuff too. And so Thanks for sharing that. Appreciate it. Coreen, we're up to 840 hearts now and climbing. So back to you. Where are we at?
Well, I just wanted to add to Jason's thank yous to my family in Riglet. So there's a big backstory to me. I'm in love with baked apple cheesecake, and a baked apple is a local berry back home. So very appreciative to my family back home and friends who made cheesecakes for me. So that might sound silly, but it's a big deal in my world. And my family in Riglet that, gave up their home for the support crew and Rebecca and I to stay in during our sleepover there. But, I want to say thank you to Rebecca for taking me up on the invite to race this race. You speak very highly of me, and I really appreciate that. And I guess it's the Labrador hospitality that it's not what I expect in return. It's just what we do as Labradorians, you know, and I hope I did Labrador justice by bringing new people to the province and all the attention that Labrador got during the race. Just because, you know, Rebecca and I were an all-female team, and we ended up making friends and finding fans all across the world that we didn't know we had. And the comments from everybody, how we inspired them. And I'm so grateful that we could do that for people, to inspire them to, you know, take the leap and try something they've never done before, and just to keep pushing forward and not give up on themselves. And for Rebecca, you know, she doesn't give herself enough credit, because she keeps talking about she feels like she held back the team. But guess what? I didn't tie a rope to her and drag her to that finish line. She got herself there. And I know that she learned a lot of riding skills through that experience. And, you know, there's many times that she got down on herself about getting stuck and holding us back. And I reminded her, guess what? Even the big boys are getting stuck. We're not the only ones getting stuck. Everybody's getting stuck. It's just the way it goes.
Yep.
To all of our sponsors, like you said, it's too hard to name them all. You know, we had financial backers, we had parts and services backers through this whole thing, and they're the ones that help really make it real. Our support crew, we're very dependent upon them. My family for being there, you know, to help with my son during the race, to be there with fuel on the road, to feed my crew. You know, mine and Rebecca's crew was just amazing individuals, and my family was a big part of helping out with that. But just so that people know, you know, when this whole state of emergency lifts in the world, you know, we plan on doing a lot more for our sponsors, and, you know, to share a gift of our appreciation for everything that they've done for us. Some more live feeds and things like this. It's a little bit difficult time right now. I'll give a little personal dig for myself. I actually wrote a children's book about the race, and I'm working through the illustrations right now in hopes that we can publish that book in a couple months, by the end of spring, early summer. So hopefully that's an exciting time, not only for us as a team, but for people in the snowmobiling world, to find something uplifting, you know, in these hard times. And I've also started writing a full novel, a manuscript of our race. So what you did hear tonight will be in there, but what you didn't hear about all the other good things. So people can look forward to a book, hopefully sooner than later. And, you know, for those who want to race, call us up, ask us questions. You know, we already have people asking us about the race, and we're glad to help. And I hope we did Cains Quest justice by sharing, you know, the race across the world and bringing on new fans and new viewers. And I really appreciate, you know, what Cains Quest does for Labrador, for tourism, and for the people, just to bring together those new friends.
Yeah, I would, from my perspective, one man's opinion here is that, you know, you guys have transitioned Cains Quest into something that's more world renowned than it ever was, right? Like, I know a year ago when Cains Quest was going on, I think I heard of the race, but I didn't know anybody in it or any part of it, and so I didn't follow it. Like, oh, okay, Cains Quest was last weekend, right? Iron Dog, I knew a little bit more about, but by getting to know both of you through this, you know, I followed the race all along, and especially the Team Virago fan page and all the checkpoints and all the things that were happening. It was exciting to watch it and to be part of it. So.
Oh, that's a huge thank you that we need to throw out is the folks who are running our fan pages, and not to mention all the fans who are posting on there, but Harriet Hamilton Fennerty, Scott Campbell, Dennis Faldorf was on there, Therese Stokes was on there, and they were all doing so many updates that you know, we weren't able to be involved in seeing that, but just hearing afterwards that our pages were reaching so many people. We really need to thank those people that took the time that they didn't have to do to stay up all night to do updates. They really helped elevate this race.
Absolutely.
Yeah, some of them were our support crew who were already getting less sleep, but we're still posting. Like my sister Charlene, she's running a
Yes.
support crew and she's keeping our fans updated. And you know, there's a lot of elements to this race, and I'm glad we could keep our fans informed through the whole thing. We really didn't know we had such a broad fan base until, you know, partway through the race. We're like, oh my God, where did all these people come from?
Well, we're getting all these like gifts from people, you know, like
Awesome.
we'd pull into a checkpoint and they would be giving us these gifts. And I mean, we were just like, it was like rock star status. It was amazing to
awesome.
see the people who wanted to know what was going on. And so I really need to credit our Facebook people, our people who did the social media. Every single one of them did an amazing job, including all of our fans who kept posting pictures and things, because that's really what's going to bring this sport to the next level, John.
Yep.
Is we're looking at a social media deal, especially with this, you know, whole deal going on. You don't need to be right next to somebody to share something on social media. So appropriate social media sharing, those folks who did that, huge thank you.
Yep. So by the way, we're pushing close to 2,000 hearts now. Just saying. You guys got some love going on there. So it's pretty amazing what's happening here on the show tonight.
I'll send one last hug to
right,
and
there you
heart to Rebecca and Jason for being such an amazing partners.
Awesome.
And back to you guys. You guys are amazing. I never could have done this without Coreen and Jason.
All right.
Ever.
Well, by far the biggest. Oh, go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say it was by far the most stressful week and fun week that I ever had. Really
amazing.
But it's good.
And we love you for it.
Yeah.
And our families, because my sister just sent me a text saying I didn't thank my family. So thank you, family.
Yeah.
Awesome. And everybody we forgot to thank, right? And so let me thank all of the people who watched tonight. We had almost a 2-hour episode here, which is by far a long shot, a record. I've never anticipated going this long, but we maintained a minimum of like 80 plus people at any given time. I think we peaked at around 130-ish or so. But I'm excited to see what the stats are when we get this thing, wound down here. And I just want to say thanks for letting me be part of this, guys. I really appreciate you guys bringing into your team and your family by allowing me to do this for you guys. And what I tell everybody is, live large, which is, make a difference out there, make the most of your day, make a difference in this world. Just
don't ever question your abilities and just go for it.
Get out there and get after it. That's what Live Large is all about, right? And so God bless everybody. Live large, share, get this out there. Let's tell the story. Let's continue to grow Cains Quest and the great sport of snowmobiling. Love you guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.